Since 1947, the Palestinian leadership has proven time and time again that they don't want a solution. Let's remember what happened on that day, 69 years ago. The United Nations voted to partition the land into a Jewish state and an Arab state. We all know what happened next. The Jews said yes. The Arabs said no. Simple as that. And today, nothing has changed. After 69 years, the Palestinians still don't want peace. They still don't want a state, and they still don't want to end the conflict. Every time there is a possibility for progress, every time there is an opportunity to choose a better path for their people, they choose the path of violence, rejection, and bloodshed. Mr. President, let us not forget that the leaders of the Zionist movement accepted the UN plan, despite all the risks, despite the threats of genocide against the Jewish people by Arab leaders. These brave leaders accepted the plan because they knew it offered the best hope for the restoration of Jewish independence after 2,000 years, and because they believed it was possible to live side by side with our Arab neighbors in the land of our forefathers. But the Arab leadership was not willing to accept the Jewish state under any conditions. Make no mistake, this was not about pushing for a better deal. A working paper of the UN Secretariat from July 1949 stated clearly, and I quote, "The Arabs rejected the United Nations partition plan in its entirety. Their goal was clear. This was not about establishing another Arab state. It was and remains about opposition to a homeland for the Jewish people." Just look at the headlines the day after the vote. Assembly votes Palestine partition, Arabs walk out, disavow any partition wall. This is the whole story. They rejected the plan and launched a war of destruction, joined by the armies of 5 Arab nations. The response was best summed up by the Secretary General of the Arab League, Azam Pasha. He promised, and I quote, "It will be a war of elimination. It will be a momentous massacre in history that will be talked about like the massacres of the Mongols or the Crusades." This has repeated itself at every stage of history. Israel makes compromises for peace. The Palestinians reject every offer and every plan and respond with a wave of violence and terror. From 1948 until 1967, when the territory that we all talk about was under Arab control, the residents did not go to the international forums, and the Arab states didn't lift a finger to create one. The founding charter of the PLO does not call for a Palestinian state. It calls on Arabs, and I quote, "to repulse the Zionist invasion and to eliminate the Zionist presence from Palestine." Let me read this again. "To repulse the Zionist invasion and to eliminate the Zionist presence from Palestine." In 1967, Israel was attacked again on 3 sides, but defeated 3 Arab armies. Again, we extended our hand to our neighbors, appealing to them to end the conflict, to end the bloodshed, to end the suffering on both sides, once and for all. the Arab world responded with one unequivocal message of rejection: no peace, no recognition, no negotiation. Mr. President, the history of Palestinian rejectionism is alive and well today. In the year 2000, Israel's Prime Minister, Ehud Barak, made an unprecedented and far-reaching offer for a Palestinian state. Believe me, this was very controversial in Israel. It involved very painful compromises on our part. But still, the Palestinian leadership, led by Yasser Arafat, said no. President Clinton urged him to change his mind. Many Arab leaders told him this was a golden opportunity to establish a state. But he refused. And not only did he say no, he encouraged the wave of terror and violence that has not ended to this very day. President Clinton called the decision to reject a state, quote, an error of historic proportions. But the Palestinians repeated this mistake 8 years later. Once again, another Israeli leader, Prime Minister Olmert, he offered the Palestinians everything they claimed to want: a state of their own, virtually all the territory in dispute, and the uprooting of the so-called settlements. What was their response? President Abbas said, and I quote, "I did not agree. I rejected it out of hand." How many times should we be shocked when the Palestinians won't even consider the most generous offers? How many times do we have to hear no until we believe it? Every time there was an opportunity to move forward, to chart a path to a better future, the Palestinian leadership rejected it. Israel has tried everything. In 2005, we dismantled entire communities and uprooted thousands of people from their homes in the Gaza Strip. And also, may I remind you, from parts of Judea and Samaria as well. This was a chance for the Palestinians to prove that their goal was the welfare of their people rather than warfare with Israel. This was an opportunity for the Palestinian leadership, and they threw it away. Instead of building hospitals in Gaza, schools, instead of investing in the future of their people, Gaza became a launching pad to attack Israeli towns and cities with rockets from above and tunnels from below. Once again, Israel opened the door to peace, and the Palestinians slammed it shut. To this day, the Palestinians refuse to assume control over the Gaza border crossings. The Palestinian leadership won't even take responsibility for the territory and the people they claim to represent, because responsibility requires accountability. It requires a practical policy of action. It means saying no to excuses, but making excuses is the policy of the Palestinian. Just think about one of the great lies that unfortunately many in this chamber repeat endlessly. Time and time again we hear that settlements are the obstacle to progress. But in 2010, for 10 months, we put a complete freeze on settlement building as a goodwill gesture to advance talks. For 10 months, not a single apartment or kindergarten or community center was built in Judea and Samaria. That's a fact. And the Palestinians still refuse to even come to the table. That's also a fact. It's not about settlements. It never was. The Palestinian rejection began before there was a single settlement, and it will continue despite every effort to move forward. In 2014, US Secretary of State John Kerry led another round of talks. The government of Israel offered deep concessions and got nothing in return from the Palestinians. We took difficult decisions and even released Palestinian prisoners who had murdered innocent Israelis. Just think about it. Just imagine the pain felt by Israelis when they watched these terrorists receive a hero's welcome from President Abbas. But then, just as the deadline was about to pass, the PA blew up the process by establishing a unity government with Hamas, the internationally recognized terror organization. The PA faced an important decision: to talk peace with Israel or join forces with a terror organization. And they chose terror. Another missed opportunity, another rejection, another embrace of the forces of violence.